Hello, my name is Opal Singleton. I'm the president and CEO of an organization called Million Kids. Located in Southern California, we've been in business 15 years. We've trained about 750,000 people on subjects such as human trafficking and online exploitation. So this podcast is podcast number 2 and a continuation of podcast number 1 related to Operation Broken Blade. To give you a quick catch up in case you haven't heard part 1, it's August 2025 in Southern California. And the feds came in from Washington, D.C., and worked with the chief of police in downtown Los Angeles, Chief Jim McDonald, and they took on Figueroa Corridor for sex trafficking. And I am proud as punch of them. So, give you a little quick background, which we covered in part 1. I recommend that you hear that so I don't have to repeat all of it. But what has happened is that in about 3 years ago, California changed their sex trafficking laws, and it was called SB 357. And some of you that follow Million Kids actually donated so that we could fight it, and we fought it tooth and nail. We put money against it. We went to Sacramento. We did what we had to do to go against it, but they passed it anyway. It was sponsored by Anthony Weiner. You need to remember that, anybody who votes in that territory. And it was signed by your governor, Newsom, okay? And so what happens is it made it so law enforcement could intervene if you're loitering for street prostitution. Well, 90% of commercial sex that takes place in California is controlled by gangs. And it is horrendous, absolutely horrendous, what happens to victims of sex trafficking. Speaking of that, I need to give you the disclaimer that I gave in the first series. And that is, if you're having a bad day, if you're depressed, or you're a victim, or you've experienced trauma, you probably don't want to hear the rest of this show, okay? Because people want me to come out and talk about sex trafficking over lunch and make it, like, palatable, okay? I can, but if you really want to know what it's like, you need to hear the facts, and this case told the facts, and I'm very, very proud of it. So it was called Operation Broken Blade. That is because a blade is that territory, in this case on Figueroa, where girls are brought in across the nation. You see, what SB 357 passed that made it so law enforcement could intervene, pimps from all over the United States came running to California. You see, so many people think that a girl wakes up and says, well, I think I'll sell my body today and I can make a couple $100 and I'll have some nice sex and it'll all work that way. It does not work that way. Mostly it is young girls, often young teens that have had a very hard life. They've been in foster care, or they're homeless, they're runaway, maybe they have almost no home life and they don't have stability, and some guy will come along and goes, hey baby, you're hot. Or some gang girl. In this case, this entire gang was run by a woman. Her name was Armstead, and she was vicious as she could be. She was called Lady Duck, and she had her name tattooed on every one of those girls. You see, these kids think they're going to meet up with some great young hunk who's going to love them and take care of them, and life's going to be good. They get to LA, and it is awful. Absolutely awful. They are broken. That's the first thing that happens to them. They are gang raped, and it is filmed, and it is put on the internet over and over and over. So these girls see themselves and are told, you are now damaged goods. You can't come back. We got to get it through to our kids right now. There's no such thing as damaged goods. It is never too late to try to get out and come back. It is no error you're going to make is so great that you can't get up. But the longer you're in this thing, the longer they will take advantage of you. It is that simple. And the longer you're in it, the harder it is to get up. So we need to do everything we can to keep kids from getting in there, and let them know if you find yourself in this situation, do whatever you can as quick as you can to get out. So this is ran by the Hoover Gang. We covered all that in the first session. Set 112. You'll have to hear the first session to know about them. And they're using their gang guys, and they're recruiting these girls. And the minute they get there, and one was only 14. from Ohio, I think, and one was 17 from Texas, if I have that right. They met somebody on social media. They figured whatever they had would be, whatever they're going to get is going to be better than what they get. They get on a bus, they get out here, they get gang raped, and they are put out online. Now, you may think that this is like Pretty Woman, and I'm going to just be real blunt with you. I'm not doing my normal Rotary luncheon right now where I have to be nice. You need to know what this is about. These girls are out there. The first thing that happens is they get tattooed, they get branded, and that is exactly what our Amaya Armstead did. She put Lady Duck tattooed across their arms. That's all about you're not yourself. You can't come back. I own you, okay? You will do what I say. And she was absolutely violent. I know this is hard to hear, but somewhere on here I have it written down exactly what she did. Well, first of all, they gave them false promises of a luxury lifestyle, and then they plied them with drugs such as oxycodone and amphetamines, and threatened violence and pimped them out. They didn't just threaten. I will find it here as somewhere as we saw. Here it is. She attacked. She was in a 7-Eleven. They have this on camera, by the way. By the way, the state of California did nothing to stop this until the feds came in. This has been going on for a long time as everybody looked the other way. And they came in, I'm going to read this. The U.S. Department of Justice, under the leadership of Attorney General Pamela Bondi, is making Los Angeles safer by arresting prolific gang members who are viciously trafficking young women and children for sex, said the acting United States Attorney Bill Essayli. Now, if you don't know Bill Essayli, he and I try not to pick a side because sex trafficking normally is not a political issue. You know, when somebody's being beaten up, raped 20 times a day, and they get none of the money, it shouldn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. It should matter, are you a human being, and are we going to stand around as other human beings and allow this to happen? Well, this administration in California not only passed laws to facilitate it, they did nothing to intervene. And when Bill Essayli was in Sacramento, the rest of the Democrats there treated him like dirt because he would try to stand against SB 357. I am proud that he is now the acting U.S. attorney in California. Here's what he said, why this case is so important. Because under California law, nothing more would happen. He's not saying this, but I'm saying this. People continue to drive up and down the corridor going, oh God, that's awful. People who lived in that community would scream and yell and say, people are running around naked and other people are buying them and their needles and their drugs and the homelessness. I can't send my children to school. I can't go to church. And everybody, it fell on deaf ears. And nobody would do anything. Now they have Bill Essayli saying that there are, quote unquote, there are no meaningful consequences for their conduct under state law. So federal government, aided by its local law enforcement partners, that is Jim McDonnell, our chief of police in Los Angeles, will step in to make sure these criminals face lengthy prison sentences. Today's operation is the first step in returning Figueroa Corridor, long known for prostitution haven, back to its residents who have suffered far too long while criminals are allowed to run amok. Thank you, Bill Essayli. You know, I'm sorry for what happened to you up there when you were in Sacramento. But given the authority in a place that federal can come in and use good laws to rescue these people is absolutely the best thing that ever happened here. These victims are not chosen randomly. You know, what people don't understand is this is a gang crime. Gangs In this case, it was the Hoover Gang, set 112. And in this case, their job was not just to make money, but to recruit poor kids everywhere they could across the nation, because the legislation in Sacramento opened the doors to California where law enforcement could not intervene. And I said that would happen at the time, and it has happened. This is the first ever case of a RICO charge in Los Angeles for sex trafficking. And it is a heinous sex trafficking case. And I am grateful that the feds worked with the local law enforcement and came in and began to charge us in the way that the charges will stick, because the federal laws are infinitely better and stronger than California laws. Okay, just in case you don't get how this works, the pimp is a woman by the name of Amaya. Okay, she's 25 years old, Amaya Armstead. She is extremely violent to these young girls. She is filmed on the, I think it was a Circle K, I can't remember, maybe it was the other one, but she was filmed at a convenience store attacking a woman that worked for her. She beat her, she pulled her hair, she held her down, she kicked her over and over, kneeled on her stomach, and the victim is screaming, "Stop, I'm pregnant." And she never stopped. She didn't care. She doesn't want her to have the baby anyway. That's downtime for her pimping her out. Armstead's moniker of Lady Duck was tattooed on at least 4 different victims. So CBS News, and I got this from 14 different sources because I want to make sure that we don't have it angled one way or the other with misinformation. A grand jury indicted 11 of the members and associates of the Hoover Criminal Gang for sex trafficking children and adults along the South Los Angeles Figueroa Corridor, according to the U.S. Department of Justice. And we will give you the links to some of these cases in this if you've gone down on it. So it lists the 11 people, and they all are gang members. They all have ridiculous names, N4, Hanzi, J Money, Vermont Star. By the way, he's from my territory out here. I don't want you to understand that they're not all just LA. They come from other counties. This gang has far-reaching territory to seduce our kids and haul them into LA. And all day and all night, they are forced to perform sex acts. Sex acts. They are advertised online. They are put out in pornography sites. They are advertised on the street. They are advertised everywhere. Their images are taken. They are made into videos that are being sold about them even while they're out there turning tricks on the street. They use these kids up. These kids get HIV, STDs, hepatitis, drug-related diseases, and horrible abortions. They are fed horrible drugs just to be able to endure it. If these girls do not make enough money in any given night, then they get beaten, and they don't get to keep that money. I don't want to get too vivid with you, but I want you to understand something. This is not Pretty Woman we're talking about. I saw that movie with Julia Roberts. She did a heck of a job. She was beautiful, and she got $3,000, and they made love. It isn't like that, really. When people want to pay for sex, they think they have the right to buy whatever filthy services they request, and your pimp does not care what happens to you. And many of these kids will have anywhere from 8 to 20, I said that again, 8 to 20 clients a night. They are often tracked by how many condoms they're given, and they have to come up with enough money to pay back that pimp. What happens when condoms break? You suddenly are short a condom. They think that you have kept the money. What happens if a John doesn't pay the girl? She will get beaten, and she will be oftentimes electrocuted, tortured, sodomized, because they think she's keeping the money. This is not what you think of as the pretty woman kind of thing. Yeah, I'm sure there's that kind of sex or prostitution out there. But what I'm talking about on Figueroa Boulevard, when there's 50 girls in a 2-block area, and these people are controlled by gangs, they don't care what happens to that girl. And that girl, at the end of the day, she's not allowed to eat until she makes her quota. She's not allowed to sleep. Many of these kids are forced to do this 20 hours a day. And at the end of the day, they do not have enough money to buy a hamburger at McDonald's. This is why it's a RICO case. This is why it's a federal case. This is about using young girls, keeping all the money and using it for money laundering. As we get through this may end up being one more part series, okay? As we get through this, one of the things you're going to find out is this is all about that cartels are using U.S. gangs. I'm talking about cartels that came over when we had open borders. And they're using gangs to use young people to make money, which is then laundered back. This is why it's a RICO case. And this is why the IRS was involved in this. I look at the people that they arrested and that are involved in the charges: 25, 22, 19, 27, 29, 22, 22, 22. Here's one that's 31 and one that's 30, but the other one is 25. So as you start to look at this, somewhere I have the list of charges and what they're going to be charged with. I'll come across that here somewhere. I have multiple pages here to work with. But I am very glad that in this case, they took this federally and are trying this with all the people involved. Now, I want you to look at it from how they investigated. Okay, it was coordinated by the local chief of police, and that's fabulous, okay? And I know him, and you need to support him. He's absolutely one of the very best and somebody who cares. Keep in mind, he works for a group of people over there that maybe don't share his values, so who knows how long he'll be there. But I know that this couldn't have happened without a masterful coordination of a group of organizations. I'll come across it here, but I know that it's, in fact, I got it right here. Let me give it to you. You talk about planning and execution and working together and investing. You know, that's what California isn't doing. They're not investing in being willing to do what it takes to take this down. People, millions of people, day in and day out, drive by this for year upon year with this state administration, and nobody did anything except to loosen the law so law enforcement cannot intervene. So here we go. The investigation involved Homeland Security, okay? The IRS. That's because they're laundering money. They're using kids for sex in our community as we all stand by and watch, that are forced to do that, and the money they make goes back into organized crime. And I bet you, before this case is over, it actually went down south of the border, but don't quote me on that because I'm betting, and we'll see where the evidence lies, and we always wait for evidence, but I have a suspicion there. It also involved the U.S. Attorney's Office for Central District of California. Why? They solicit these girls all over the place, and these victims are from there, and that's how they're able to build the case, including support from the Nebraska State Patrol, the Keith County Attorney's Office from Nebraska. Why would you do that? Because some of the victims have been recruited out of state, exactly as I said would happen with SB 357, okay? It included the California Highway Patrol. It included the LA Department of Children and Family Services. That's because some of the victims are foster kids. and they need intervention. They need help. They need assistance. They need to be taken out of what they are going through and reestablish a quality life, not in the same community that they came from. Because I guarantee you that if they're in the same system, the same area, they will be retargeted by a gang all over again. It also included NCMEC, National Center for Missing and Exploited Services. They are the ones that do all the hotlines for foreign national trafficking, for gang trafficking, for sex trafficking of minors, and also when your kid decides to send a nude. They took, what was that number? 36 million reports last year. It is the old John Walsh, America's Most Wanted Foundation, that has become one of the largest global institutes in the world for saving kids. And I am proud of John Walsh, and what's his son's name now? Is it Josh, or starts with a J? I am proud of him for doing that also. So it also includes the Assistant United States Attorney's Office, including Chelsea Norrell, the Violent and Organized Crime Section, and Morel Raza from the General Crime Section. They are leading the prosecution efforts. And then they want to make sure that it's because they're charged and they have not yet been sentenced, that we understand that these are charges, not convictions. But I want you to understand the complexity of this case and how they went about making it happen. You see, from my point of view, who has fought human trafficking in Southern California for the last 15 years, these people did what nobody else was willing to do. When millions of people, day in, day out, not only drove by and watched these victims be violated, but some of them supported bills which the current administration authored and approved and signed to make it easier for people to pimp out kids in the state of California, and not just kids. I mean, I don't care if you are 18 years old, or you're 19, or you're 27. And I don't care if you're, LGBTQ, or if you're hetero, or you're have other kinds of things you like to do. I don't care. No human being should be used for sex by another gang or person or legislation that permits it, so that some organized criminal group or some coward in the name of a pimp can pimp out these kids and these women. And they don't get the money. Everybody on TV makes it sound so sexy. Oh, you ought to do webcam sex. You ought to get on fans only. Kind of thing. You ought to be on Pornhub. You can make some money and you'll pay your tuition. They all make it sound really good. But once you're in, it is a completely different story. I want to quote Jim McDonnell here because he's one of my heroes, by the way. I have unabashedly support him. I know him as an individual as well as a leader. And to be fair, I need to point out that I have worked for him at one point because after he was sheriff and before he became the chief of police, he was the head of USC's Safe Communities Institute, where I'm an instructor. And excellent individual, very strong moral values, committed to protecting victims and committed to taking on sex trafficking and human trafficking. I knew him when he did that in Long Beach, way back when I was first getting started, and he was my hero then. Jim McDonnell says the victims in this case, many of them are minors, are runaways or from the foster care system. They were preyed on by individuals who sought to profit from their pain. That's putting it nicely. The suspects forced sex workers to give up everything they made, according to the indictment. The Justice Department said the women who refused or disobeyed were either beaten, berated, humiliated, starved for affection, and given drugs or starved by withholding food. Several of the women were branded with tattoos of some of their nicknames. So Armstead, fortunately, has been transferred out of state custody so that she can be charged federally. And I think that's a great thing to do. So I want to go into some of the specifics of this, of what this is about. One of the things I want to point out is this takedown took months to make it happen. Months. It takes a serious commitment by law enforcement. And that means that all law enforcement works together with the same goal, and that is rescuing and protecting the victim while getting them away from some of the worst, which are these gang guys. So as they looked at it, they began to say that Fox News was embedded with the agents during the early morning raid. I want to quote Fox News here. They're saying that this is a textbook example of interagency cooperation. Boy, it couldn't be said any easier. You get that many people with that many agencies. Keep in mind, they're not going in there to just talk to the mayor. They are taking down a street gang at a Figueroa area in Los Angeles that has been allowed to thrive for literally years and years and years. And in fact, they've received money and investment as they've tried to rehabilitate the gang members. Well, I'm happy for any that got rehabilitated, but these people did not be part of that. They are out there hurting some of the worst people in the world. Some of the worst people in the world are out there hurting these young kids. And by the way, I want to point out something about sex buying. Where the hell are your morals? Okay? What gives you the right to go out and violate a poor child? That you might be their 15th client of the night, their 18th client of the night. You can see the burn marks on them. You can see the bruising. You can see where they have been held down or beaten. You can see that they have, been through a whole lot of stuff, that they are most likely on drugs, and they are not in love with you, and you might be their 19th client that night. Where do you get up buying this kind of thing and saying it is our right? Okay? It is never our right to take advantage of someone, especially a minor, who is being held against their will. And do you know, at the end of the night, they don't get to keep that money. You think, you took my money, you owe me this service. They don't get that money. They don't get that money, and they are not in love with you. We need to take a look at this. I am so proud that we finally have a federal government that, even if your state government looks the other way, says enough is enough. And they find the officials within the state government that are willing to stop this. And I can tell you that most of the people that live on Figueroa Corridor are grateful that for once again they can have a life, that they might be able to once again find an end to this. I hope this is just the beginning. I don't know how I feel about feds always coming in with the National Guard, blah, blah, blah. I walk down the path of the middle when it comes to politics. But here's what I'm going to tell you. Had these feds not come in and done this, those girls will die a long and miserable death. And their life will be miserable for the rest of their life. Now that neighborhood has a chance for decency again. Now some kids who had no hope for life have a chance to get services and get out. It'll take a lifetime of recovery. It will. But I'm very, very grateful that the feds have come in, and this is going to be charged in a way with Fed charges that might be able to stick in many of these cases, because as Bill Essayli said, the state charges wouldn't even touch them. But with feds have passed charges and they're going after it, they work together, and these kids have a life again. You may not agree with me. You have a right to write to me if you want. opal@millionkids.org, opal@millionkids.org. If you value our work, I hope that you will send us funding and make donations. We can't do this without your help. But I think that this is one of the most promising things I've seen for a long time. God bless those victims. I hope they get help. It will be years in their road to recovery, but at least they now have a chance. Thank you for following Million Kids. Thank you for listening to this podcast, and we'll see you on the next podcast. Give your family a hug. Let them know you love them. See you next time. A chance. Thank you for following Million Kids. Thank you for listening to this podcast, and we'll see you on the next podcast. Give your family a hug. Let them know you love them. See you next time.